What is up, guys? So this is going to be my review for The Flash, Season 4, Episode 13, titled True Colors. So let's get into the review. So this episode, the basic premise of the episode was Barry and all the bus metas were breaking out of prison. And first of all, how Team Flash discovered that Barry was being sold to Ambient, the way that Cecile read Wolf's mind, was honestly something I didn't expect to happen. I feel like maybe that the only reason Cecile actually has this powers is for this specific reason. I feel like that the writers couldn't actually come up with a way for Team Flash to find out about Barry being sold to Ambient Black, so they gave Cecile these powers, and like in the previous episode, and they said, all right, let's go with that, because like why else would Cecile have powers other than for this specific purpose? But at the same time, that didn't bother me at all. It was just something that I want to point out. But it was definitely unexpected. The way that Team Flash discovered about this, I thought that they were going to investigate because they think that Wolf is acting a little strangely, but it turns out, no, she just read his mind. Something I really liked from this episode is the way that Barry got out of the metahuman wing. I don't mean out of prison completely, or the metahuman wing actually. Out of his cell. He put together this whole contraption that made acid and melted the lock. I felt like that was actually pretty cool, because usually this show forgets that Barry's a genius. He's a scientist, and he knows how to do this kind of stuff. And usually the show forgets about that, so the fact that they did it in this particular episode was pretty cool to me. I actually really like the way that they got out or the way they started the prison break. Which brings us to Barry teaming up with the bus metas. And this is like the basic premise of the episode. Barry teams up with the bus metas, which I felt was actually much more entertaining than I expected it to be. I definitely expected it to be entertaining, but the actual characters, most of them were pretty bad villains. Like Kilgore, he was a terrible villain, and Hazard she was an okay villain, and Black Bison, terrible villain, and then Dwarf Star, he had cool powers and all, but he wasn't like he was a good villain. He was not an amazing or anything. So none of them were great, amazing characters, but they really worked within this within this storyline of breaking out of prison. Even Kilgore, which is really unexpected because I actually hated him, and he was like the worst villain of the week villain ever on The Flash. But even him, he was pretty okay, and he was pretty good in this episode. And the whole storyline of him trying to break out of prison was done really well. Now, I don't actually really like how it ended. Not the Devoe part, but Barry staying behind and then being released from prison a minute later. And I really like how that all turned out, which I will talk about in a minute. But the whole storyline of him trying to break out of prison, or trying to break these other people out of prison and away from more trying to break them out of the deal with Blacksmith, because then Blacksmith can use them for other bad stuff. So he tried to get them out from that, not really from prison. Wolf explained that Barry is just trying to get these guys out, and then he's going to bring them back in as the Flash, just to get them away from the Blacksmith deal. So even though like he wasn't actually trying to break them out of prison, so technically it wasn't really a prison break, but still I thought it was done really well. Now, Ralph got a new power in this episode, which, by the way, he can't do in the comics at all. Like, I looked up his power set in the comics. This shape-shifting thing is not one of his abilities, but it is one of Plastic Man's abilities, because Ralph, or the Elongated Man in the comics at least, is a much more limited power set than Plastic Man. He has the more basic powers. Plastic Man can do basically everything that comes with elasticity. He can shapeshift. Ralph can't. So I'm guessing. So it looks like they're borrowing from Plastic Man a little more than expected, which is fine. But the way they used his shape-shifting abilities in this episode was actually pretty funny and entertaining and done really well. So Ralph was shape-shifting into Wolf in order to stop the deal. And that whole subplot, which really wasn't a subplot, it was one of the two main plots of the episode, but I'll call it a subplot because it wasn't the main plot. But whatever, it doesn't really matter. But that subplot was really entertaining. Just Ralph, even though that he can't actually do that in the comics, it doesn't really bother me because Plastic Man and the Elongated Man are really, really similar. Like, so similar that it doesn't really, that you could take some elements from Plastic Man into Ralph Dibny, and they did it here by making him a criminal, basic kind of a little, because Plastic Man He's supposed to be a criminal turned good. Here, Ralph Dibny is a kind of criminal because he did that whole thing with framing that guy, and then he's turning good. So that, and also with the shapeshifting thing, they're definitely borrowing things from Plastic Man, which definitely does not bother me as much as other comic book inaccurate stuff. But the whole subplot with him shapeshifting into Wolf was fairly entertaining and done well. So, like I said earlier, I didn't like how Barry got out of prison in this episode because the whole episode was building to this prison break that never actually happened and it failed, which is fine. But then a minute later, they come up with some lame way of getting Barry out of prison by making Ralph shapeshift into Devoe and faking him getting out of prison. I don't like this because Ralph just learned about this power and he's using it now, after a couple episodes of them trying to figure out how to get him out of prison. They get this lucky break of Ralph having the shape-shifting ability, which is a little underwhelming. The way they got him out of prison was a little underwhelming, and it makes the whole storyline, it undermines the whole storyline because they should have gotten real evidence proving that Devoe framed him and that Devoe is actually this guy who has superpowers or whatever, because they should have done that. But instead they went the lazy route of having Ralph shapeshift into Devoe and go in there and say that Devoe's alive, which wouldn't really hold up, because they'd be able to tell that they could check the body and see that Devoe's dead. They could see the body and then come to the conclusion that this is probably a metahuman who could shapeshift or something like that. So that wouldn't really work, really. So just the way they went about it, getting him out of prison, I didn't like how they did it in this episode. Even though I actually predicted that he will get out of prison in this episode, I feel like the storyline went on a little bit shorter than it should have. It was only 4 episodes, or him being in prison was 4 episodes, so it wasn't really a status quo change or anything like that. It was only a short thing, and that's what I expected. I just wanted it to be a little bit longer. And I definitely think that if it had a better ending, like if the way they got Barry out of prison was by proving that Devoe framed him, then it would have been a more satisfying end. It would have made the whole storyline feel more complete, because at this point it just feels like it's over and we're done with it and that's it. Because it just had such an unsatisfying ending, which was my main gripe with this episode. Not really the whole season or anything. It's just because the whole storyline of him being in prison was actually done really well up to the point where he was out. Because when he got out, it was just such an unsatisfying ending that I just didn't like it. So I have 3 more things to talk about for this review, and all of them revolve around Devoe. The first thing is that Marlize is clearly doubting him, because you see throughout the episode that she's doubting him and everything, and it's mostly because of the new bodies, which I will talk about in a minute. But you can see that Devoe needs to use those tears that get her high as a kite, which I don't really remember what they do, but they definitely do something to her, and that's the only way he can make her comply. But it's been a theory that Marlize will betray him, and it feels like they're actually really setting that up, and it probably will happen. And that was, I feel like, a fine part of the episode. It wasn't great, it wasn't bad or anything. It was just there. But it just feels like that. Yeah, it is setting up Marlize's betrayal of Devoe, and that would probably be the main way that Team Flash defeats him, because at this point he has so many powers, which, by the way, Devoe got the powers of all the bus metas that were trying to escape from the prison, meaning Hazard and Dwarf Star and Black Bison and also Kilgore. He got all the powers. He could control statues, he could control technology, he can shrink things, and he can control luck. And on top of that, he's a genius, and also he can mind control. So he is a god. I think this was his whole plan, making these bus metas and getting these particular powers to make himself invincible, maybe, because at this point he has so many powers that, how can anybody defeat him, especially Team Flash? Now you can see that later we are told that he's going after all the bus metas, including Ralph, so he clearly wants elasticity as well. Or maybe what he wants is maybe his main thing he wants from Ralph is the shape-shifting thing, so it could go back to looking like Devoe, meaning Neil Sandilands, the actor Neil Sandilands. that's a definite possibility, because at this point he doesn't really need the elasticity powers. I'm fairly confident that every single one of those powers is something that he needs in his grand plan, and the elasticity or the shapeshifting is just there so he can look like himself again and look like the Thinker or Devoe. So that is definitely a possibility, but I just thought that him getting all those powers was insane. I didn't see it coming at all. I thought that this actor was here to stay, but it turns out he's not, and now Hazard is playing Devoe, which is a little weird because she's female and he's male, so it's pretty weird. But at the same time, he's gonna change his body at any point now. Like, he's gonna change to any other person. So really, you can't really get attached to any one actor other than, I think, Neil Sandilands, because it's possible that he will get Ralph's powers and do that thing. In conclusion, I thought this episode was generally pretty good. Nothing amazing or anything. Him breaking out of prison with the other metahumans was done really well, but it wasn't done amazingly or anything. The villains of the week were much better than I expected them to be. Ralph's new power, even though it's not accurate to the comics, it is pretty cool, and the whole stop loss surrounding that is pretty cool. Although, even it's considering all the changes, all the things they're using from Plastic Man, it makes me wonder why they actually didn't use Plastic Man. But other than that, other than Barry getting out of prison, which was a little unsatisfying to me, this episode was pretty great. So I'll give this episode an 8.6 out of 10. But let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And also, let me know what you thought about the episode in the poll. Thanks for watching.